Hey, hello everybody, welcome back. This is Exodus. The following footage is this past week. It's Nightfall. It was arc damage, um, and it was Epic's Prime, obviously. Those of you who are playing Destiny, familiar with that. Others, what happens is each week you'll get a different weekly challenge, and there's a Nightfall strike and just a normal weekly heroic strike. And what happens is on the Nightfalls, you can get really good loot. You get one piece, though. You can get legendary or exotic items. And the weekly heroic, you get 2 engrams, which are, random pieces of loot that you get when you turn into the Cryptarch in the tower. And 9 strange coins, which are used to buy things from this guy who shows up every Friday through Sunday called Zer, and he has exotic items, all the time. So it's a good way to do stuff each week for experience and to get, further progress and get gear. In this footage, I was with a friend, Dude Man, who still need to do it. So I will not be getting any rewards at the end, as I already did it for this week. I generally like to jump in and get all 3 Nightfalls and all 3 weekly heroics, max levels completed. Because on Tuesday when it resets, just because I like to raid throughout the rest of the week, whether it's for my own, 3 personal characters to get loot, or just to help other people out and work on strats, etc. So here, this week's burn was arc, and what that is, if for those who aren't familiar, is you get additional damage put in on your weapons to the enemies if there's this particular burn on. And there's void damage, arc damage, and solar damage that are characterized within your weapons, as well as within the fire that you get from enemies. And what makes arc burn particularly dangerous on this strike is that a lot of the other enemies that you fight are using arc weapons. So you take damage just as much, if not more, than they are taking from you if you're using arc weapons. So it's a cool little concept that they implemented, because each week is something different. I know they haven't really done solar in a long time, because like the best guns in the game tend to be solar oriented, it seems like. And it's just so it's kind of sucks that you don't see it as much. But when it does happen, it's, I understand they don't want to do it just because you can go through it a lot quicker and whatever, but at the same time, it's still, you need to rotate everything evenly, in my opinion. Which brings me to some things I like to talk about in Destiny. I like to see, further changes. Obviously, they made a lot of changes since release that have, benefited the game and helped the population's concerns, ease them a little bit. I still think there's plenty of room to improve. You only have 2 events since the inception of this game, and only one of them is consistently returning, instead of having anything new or the return of the other one in an improved fashion. And those 2 events were Iron Banner and the Queen's Wrath. Now, initially, the Queen's Wrath was really awesome for people because you're able to farm the gear and break it down for Ascendant Shards, which Ascendant Shards at the time were the go-to item that you needed to upgrade, your gear to help progress you to level 30 quicker. And, if you could only go through the raid so many times, and you would get either Ascendant Shards or Ascendant Energy. Shards obviously would go towards your armor, and energy would go towards your weapons. And you could get a fair amount from the raid. I mean, you still do. If you do the Vaults of Glass, you get a lot of energy and shards. However, the thing that sucks now is you don't even really use them anymore. A lot of the guns that you have, generally, as far as being better, well, if you play a lot, I mean, obviously there's people with different play times. They're not completely useless. A lot of people still need them. A lot of people only have time to play one character and just don't have that much time to play in general, or they play other games and then they casually play Destiny. So I can see where, shards and energy are still a utility to, reward people with and give out. But the fact that with the recent expansion, the Dark Below, you need radiant shards and radiant energy for all the good new weapons, which are obviously better than the previous expansion. It just makes it a little, I don't even know, a waste to continually give Ascendant Shards and energy without a way to turn them in or make use of them. Now, the reason I say that is because people who do play a lot, who have 3 characters or who just play a lot in general, well, I've seen a lot of times where they'll have 100 plus of each, 200 plus of each, 300 plus of each, Ascendant material in their vault, and even more. I mean, it goes on and on. And without having a way to use that still, it just seems pointless to keep. Now, what I'd like to see happen to not make it completely irrelevant is you are able to trade them in for radiant materials. Now, I know currently there's a lady, Eris, who is the centerpiece of the new expansion, The Dark Below. She will allow you to exchange radiant energy for radiant shards and vice versa. And you need a black wax idol, which is a little, piece of material that you get from killing Hive, which allows you a glimmer boost when you kill, said enemies. And so if you do that, you can easily level up, new raid weapons or new raid armor quicker with the exchange if you're ranked 4 in her faction. Now, what I'd like to see them add either to her or to the Vanguard Crucible or just factions in general as well is to be able to exchange Ascendant Shards or Ascendant Energy for, guns or for radiant materials. Just because, if you're not going to use them and they keep stacking up, from what I've seen, you can have almost unlimited within your stacks. Whereas like Synthesis, you can only have 20 and then it starts a new stack. Ascendant Materials, it looks like you can almost go endless because I've seen 700 plus alone just in my vault. And I haven't heard of Max or seen anyone in particular combine their characters' stuff, but it can go even further. It just seems pointless to, not have a system in place to be able to utilize those materials in a better manner. To go back on, those, and I went on that huge tangent, so the Queen's Wrath, they patched that quick, so you couldn't farm her gear to use the Ascendant Shards or Ascendant Energy to upgrade your other gear, and then it pretty much made the event pointless because her gear just wasn't up to par with raid gear and even some of the other gear that was out at the time. So to do those hard missions over and over and to get the same piece of gear over and over, it was just pointless because when you broke it down, you didn't get that much in return. Iron Banner, again, they retooled it. They made it better as it's progressed. However, I still don't see the appeal of it. Normal Crucible is awesome as far as the balance and the enjoyment. Iron Banner also is awesome and enjoyable. However, the fact that they consistently only make it control is what is kind of getting on my nerves. I don't really engage in PvP too much anymore just because it's either, too easy for me most times. I don't like to brag or sound arrogant. It's just the facts. Like the matchmaking system as far as true skill just doesn't seem to be valid or a good, indicator of matchmaking compared to other games that I've seen. I'm always wildly positive and have, if I go in by myself, I never get matched up against, people of the same skill level on my own team, let alone on the other opposite team. So anyways, with Iron Banner, that in itself is another exploitative thing where, the fact of raw skill still is there, but not only that, you have the skill, you have the gap of levels and gap of gear. So those who play more are obviously going to have the advantage over those who don't play as often. And, they still have the other Crucible open and available, or PvP, I should say, when the Iron Banner is going. However, again, I'd like to see more variety. I'd like to see 3v3 within the Iron Banner and other 6v6 game types as well, because just doing control just seems pointless because they classify the event as a tournament. However, it's not really a tournament. You're farming faction, you're farming bounties, you're trying to get gear, Iron Banner specific gear. And, you know, it's not like you're on a team and your team is advancing or your Guardian is advancing in any particular way that's different than the normal Crucible. So I like to see them change the game types up from time to time, or offer more than one game type for Iron Banner, if anything. However, I would like to see no Iron Banner for a while. They have not done any PvE related events since the Queen's Wrath. They said they were going to remodel the Queen's Wrath. However, the House of Wolves expansion's coming up here in a couple months. I believe the release date's March 10th. So it'd be kind of pointless to bring her back when I have a feeling she's going to be the centerpiece of that expansion to begin with. Now, here's a couple ideas just off the top of my head on what you could do, in essence, to make different events. Obviously, you have these new Sparrows from the Dark Below to do tricks. You have the old Sparrows, you know, Timebreaker as far as speed and utilizing it in a way that, you know, you don't want it to self-destruct, etc. Now, I know it's been talked about ad nauseum on forums and everything else, but yeah, add Sparrow races or trick events. You know, a point system to the tricks, you know, and you make either special maps for it and special arenas for it, or you can just have it where you know, match make something and then you go in a patrol setting, you know, you do other stuff to race or do tricks, and then your points add up over a, you know, certain amount of time on a given course, you know, through the planets that you know, patrol right now. You know, something like that would be cool. Another thing is you could create environments or block off, again, sections of patrol and make it to where that is a given map that you're on, and then you get match made up with people, or you go in with your friends and it's a survival type mode. Because right now there's public events that bring in random spawning occurrences of enemies, whether it's through ships or coming out of caves, you know, etc. And it doesn't really get utilized in a sense that makes it dangerous or that makes it interesting. Now, as you've seen in the past with like Gears of War, with Horde mode, or, you know, even Halo and with Firefight, you know, Bungie has that in their arsenal. They have that experience of making a game type similar to that. And when you look at the Omnigul Strike, it's very similar to that type of mode, because you just get a plethora of enemies coming, and they're all different varieties, they're all different kinds, a mix of Hive, a mix of Fallen. It's just really, really fun because you're always on edge, you're always engaged, you're always battling. And so some people have brought that up on the forums, of bringing a mode like that out where it's a survival-esque type mode, and that would just seem to make sense, because if you're guarding the tower, the last city on Earth, I mean, to go out and do these missions is one thing, to go out and do the raids are another thing, but they get repetitive. So to have events that section off the different types of enemies, the different planets, you know, the different environments, and make it to where you're guarding, you know, a specific thing would be awesome. So, you know, you could put us outside the city, you know, the last city, the tower area, and have us defending against a certain thing for a while, and when you succeed, maybe you can trigger something in the game, or if you don't succeed, it can weaken the, you know, fortress, and then eventually change something in the storyline, perhaps. You know, there's just all those different types of things that you could do, but there definitely needs to be more PvE events and a variety to the PvP events. Again, if you're just going to stick with Iron Banner, you need to have more than just control, in my opinion. Or if you're going to do anything else in regards to PvP, you know, have it to do something in regards to a leveling system specific to the PvP, or perhaps even like a tournament setting, you know, a bracket type thing, like you sign up with so-and-so, or you get match made into teams, you know, random teams would be fun. Then you have a bracket, you know, it doesn't mean anything, you don't have to get anything from it. but then you have an actual tournament type deal. And when your team wins, if they have it to where you could, node into another team that wins, on their end, that would be pretty sweet. I don't think any game has really done anything like that. Everything's had to be custom set up to where the players have to take control of that. So if something like that were to be possible, they say Destiny's an innovative game. They're trying to do a bunch of things different. So maybe that's something they can look into and talk to. Again, I'm not a programmer. I don't know how hard that would be or how hard that is. It just seems like that would be a sweet, innovation that they could implement to their PvP system for an event. Again, PvE needs some tweaks in regards to their event system. They only had one ever, and that one ended up being a dud after they patched it. So, you have the Reef, which isn't utilized at all except for 2 cutscenes, I believe, still. They haven't done any events there. They haven't let us explore it. There's no multiplayer PvP map on it. I know they're going to utilize it down the road in House of Wolves. I've heard that's where the raid is, because House of Wolves is all about the Awoken and the Queen and etc. But even in the Queen's Wrath event, you didn't get to utilize the Reef at all, any landscape. You didn't really get to learn more about the Awoken. There was no storyline. So with the PvE events, I think there needs to be a story-based element. And I understand they might not like to do that because they want to make more money or it'd be too much effort and it'd take time away from, the other expansions they're actually working on. But they definitely need to do something to keep people engaged, because I know so many people who comment on their Facebooks posts or their Twitter posts, etc., just being irritated with how, cookie cutter it seems to be, where it's just a constant grind doing the same thing over and over. There's not enough variety and what have you. Now, I still have fun. There's still fun to be had in this game. Don't get me wrong. It's just, again, these are just some ideas I like to see them push forward with within the PvP and PvE events that they talked about consistently having. Because I remember the community manager talking about how there's a team that is dedicated 24/7 to providing a new activity per day, per week, by month, etc., to make Destiny slightly different. At all times there's something out. There's going to be something unique day to day, and I've yet to see that, to be honest. Like, public events are obviously scripted into the game. Missions and strikes, etc., are scripted into the game. And again, you have an event every so often, and so far it's just primarily been Iron Banner. So I have yet to see the fruits of the labors of that so-called team that's supposed to be dedicated to bringing a new form of experience daily to the Destiny community. Now, yes, there are daily quests that, pop up and they change daily, but again, I know that that's scripted into the game, and it's in a formula, and it's a randomized ordeal, kind of like the loot system. You never know what you're going to get. Once it pops up, you know that there's a table already preset on the things that you can get. So, again, dailies and weeklies, missions, Nightfalls like this is a weekly event. Still, it's not really anything new. Yeah, it's different from the previous week, but again, we've had the game long enough to know that it's not anything different than the formula that you put into the game, and it's a scripted, ordeal. So I like to see them change that, actually implement more things, maybe boost the public events again, because now it's almost pointless to get it. Maybe make it available for Radiant Shards to be a super, super rare occurrence within public event drops, because again, just to get Ascendant materials is almost pointless for a lot of the people now. I don't know percentages on who is, on the casual to the mid to the, hardcore by any means in regards to the community. But I do know that, again, those elements of the game are fading, because let's face it, with each expansion, kind of like in other games, the other stuff becomes obsolete, and that's just one thing that I don't want to see go obsolete, especially with it being a primary focus to be rewarded within the players. Now, again, that's kind of just, like I said, a long rant. This was the Nightfall. You saw Sepic's crime go down. And wait a few minutes, you see what my friend Dude Man got, and it pops up. He finished a exotic bounty portion of his Tolan's legacy, which I believe is a bad juju, if I remember correctly. And he ended up getting a legendary gun. And I don't know where it's from. I don't know if it was Vanguard or a faction, but I do know it was a gun that was included within the Dark Below. And as you see here in a few seconds on the reward screen, it pops up, and it was a machine gun. So SMG, or LMG I believe is what they call it. Light machine gun. And thank you for watching. Take care.